Hello guys, it's Final Render here, and I'm going to be doing another kind of unscripted version of how I built Sanctuary. Sanctuary I actually built before I did the video on Castle, and Sanctuary I think is probably the most aesthetic settlement you can actually get. I think it's probably the prettiest initially, and it's probably one of the most rewarding ones to fix up. It's also one of the biggest, which helps quite a lot as well. So I do have an awful lot of mods installed onto Sanctuary to try to make it as pleasing to the eye as possible, and the attempt with Sanctuary was to make a really nice looking place that fitted within the lore but was also probably the most aesthetically pleasing settlement. I thought about turning it into a high Nox fortress, so to speak, but it just didn't work, so I decided to try to restore it to default as much as possible. So the first thing you'll probably notice is that everything's very clean and everything is very pre-war, so to speak, and that is because I've got several mods installed which restore a lot of the textures back to the original textures before the bombs fell. Firstly, I have got the mod which actually repairs all of the roofs on the buildings. The roofs are all bombed out and they look, well, destroyed. So I decided to download the mod which replaced the roofs with the default roofs, and also the walls in the buildings. All of the walls on the houses, they were all destroyed and filthy. So I decided to download the mod which restored them to their original pre-war textures, just to make it really nice and clean and tidy looking. And finally, I restored the original pre-war textures on all of the roads in the streets. Now, the roads originally in the default game in the vanilla are very dirty and grimy, as you would expect for, Fallout, but in this case it actually replaces them with a clean texture which looks so much better. The geometry is still broken, but they look clean now, which I love. One thing which really bothered me when I first got to Sanctuary and I first started playing Fallout 4 is that there is an awful lot of clutter which you can't get rid of. There's an awful lot of dead leaves and there's these giant shrubbery bushes which you can't move, and it really did spoil the look of the place, and also meant that you were kind of restricted onto where you could build your own buildings. So I also downloaded another mod which will allow you to get rid of an awful lot of the dead shrubbery and a lot of the dead bits of litter all along the roads. There's little bits of rubble everywhere, and having the clean roads and having rubble all over them, that didn't work, so I decided to clear away an awful lot of the rubble. There's a couple mods which do that in Sanctuary, and one of them is called Clean Settlements, which helps get rid of all of the rubbish, and there is also another one called Scrap Scrap, which was quite an early one, which helps get rid of some of that stuff which normally you couldn't scrap. So now the place was cleaned up and pretty respectable already, but I obviously need to add some more buildings to make it feel much more like a town. First thing I did was add this little picnic area. I decided to have kind of like a campfire aesthetic going on here, where there's seating and benches, a big fire, and it's lit by the fire barrels that you can get. And then after that, I of course needed power, lots of power. So I decided to use one of the original foundations that was in settlement and build a little power generator here. Or I say little, it's huge. It gives me an awful lot of power. And to make it look really, really aesthetic, I decided to fence it off with all this security fencing, because every time in the real world I've seen power stations and power generators, they've always been fenced off with secure fencing. So I think that was a perfect idea to really help with the aesthetic. And also I decided to have all of the power going along the rooftops. I didn't want to clutter the place with power conduits and stuff, so I decided to have all of the power going along my lovely new clean and restored roofs. I then decided to add a little trading post area towards the back of Sanctuary. It makes sense that if you've got a settlement like this that's pretty big and pretty respectable, you want the traders coming in to spend some money, and also it helps you as the player because it means you get an inflow of caps coming into your workshop. So I decided to put all of the buildings down here, with the exception of the bar, and the bar goes into the lovely brand new Sanctuary Hills Hotel. I really like this little hotel. It was a bit of a nightmare to build originally because I wanted to do some different things. I wanted to have individual rooms, each with their own little doors, but it's very hard to get that to work and look clean and tidy. So I decided to make it kind of a community sleeping area. It's kind of more like a shared youth hostel in a way, but I think it works. I obviously went to the effort to try to decorate every house as much as possible, just so that it can look nice and homely. Again, I wanted Sanctuary to look really nice and pretty to walk into, so I made sure that I had clean beds, clean toilets, clean fridges, everything like that. and Mama Murphy's got her own little house, and I think that's quite nice, and I've just put lots of thought into the aesthetic. I then realised I had a spare plot of land with nothing on it, and it was right by the entrance of Sanctuary Hill, so I thought, why not build a little guard post here, a little armoury? Because I thought that would be a cool idea, you know, say if people, they just come off of the road and they want to move into Sanctuary, maybe you can go and register your families and stuff, register your skills, and then they can pick a job, give you the goat test, everything like that. So I decided to build this little armoury. Again, I'm using the alternate settlements mod to give me most of the walls and the floors, and I did get the place in red mod to work this time, but I didn't really need it in the end, but I eventually got it to work, so that's actually a good thing for other settlements. Spent ages trying to pick a door. You know, I wanted this place to look kind of like a military base, but also kind of like an office at the same time, kind of like an admin office, so it's not all guns and barbed wire, it's just kind of like a little office. And I decided to put up some cinder blocks for all of the roofing area. I thought that looked good because I was going to go with the wooden railings like I did on Castle, but since this is kind of a bunker, I thought putting some cinder blocks there actually works quite well. It really does help the aesthetic. And then to finish it off, I put 2 artillery pieces on the top. I don't know if I need to, really, but hey, 2 big guns is better than 1 big gun. And on the inside, I decided to really nicely decorate the inside. I decided to put all these old pre-war consoles and stuff inside. You don't actually need them, they're not functional, but I thought why not? And here we go, using the sentry bots in your settlements mod, I forget the name. I have now got a Mr. Gutsy, and he does improve my defense. He does actually attack enemies on sight. And I'll put a link to all the mods in the description of this video. And he'll go around happily and just kind of flow around, not causing any trouble, and everything will be good. I decided to try to decorate it quite nicely, but I actually changed my mind quite a lot about a few things. But I thought, what armory is an armory without some weapon racks? So using the actual weapon racks mod, I was able to buy lots of cheap guns from my own market, and then put the guns on the walls, and I think it looks really, really cool. I don't know about you, but I was actually quite annoyed when the weapon racks weren't in the vanilla game, because you see it in all the trailers, you even see it in the title screen, that there are weapon racks with actual weapons and stuff on them, but you can't get them in the settlements building. It's such a weird decision. The only problem with the mod currently is that the weapons you put onto the rack, it's just their default state. So say if you put a scope on there or a long barrel, you won't see it, but the weapon does still have it. You can take it off and use it again, but you don't actually see the modifications on the weapon. Apparently it's something to do with the actual game engine as opposed to the mod, so that's a huge shame. I hope that the mod creator actually can find a way around it, because that would be very cool. Okay guys, so that was how I built Sanctuary with mods. As I've said, I've put several mods on to actually clean up a lot of the rubbish, to replace a lot of the original textures with the clean pre-war textures, build a couple new buildings, put some items in there that you normally wouldn't find in the vanilla game, and I think I've actually made a really nice sanctuary here. It's nothing too special in terms of function, but it just looks nice. It looks as good as Sanctuary is going to get without doing huge overhauls. I could just put the original pre-war version there, or I could fill it with huge forest and trees and flowers everywhere to make it look like a completely different or completely modern everyday town. But in terms of keeping it similar to Fallout, but still as clean as it's going to get, I think this is the Sanctuary, which I'm quite proud of so far. I think in other playthroughs I might try to do Sanctuary as a very different kind of place. I might try it as like a shanty town or more like an urban city kind of place. But in this one I wanted to make it look clean and tidy and kind of like what an old pre-war town that actually has tried to hold on to the American dream might look like. And in this case, I think it's pretty darn good. And it also is still pretty functional. It brings in a lot of money using all these traders that you can see on screen. It's got pretty much every crafting table you can get. It's got, I think currently it's got something like 24 settlers maybe. So it's doing very well. And I really like it. I definitely use it as my kind of main base now. So thank you very much for watching, guys. This is Final Render, and this has been how I've built Sanctuary Hills in Fallout 4 on the PC using mods. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to send me your settlements. See you soon.